dumb. Don't do anything dumb. Don't do anything dumb.
Block it.
Still not clear. Mikhailenko loops.
Win it.
Cannot. It's bouncing the box.
No, not what you want.
Ball hooked in. Bobbling around. Hook it away. Oh!
They have it here on the left-hand side. The ball goes in. Clear it. No.
Oh my God, we concede at the fucking end. Oh my God, we concede at the end, and it's the goal you could concede. We're just...
I don't believe it. James Tarkowski smashes it at the back post.
Crumble. No. Crumble.
Tarkowski scores 2-2.
Oui. No. Tarkowski.
Oh my God, absolutely right off Michael Oliver as well.
That's absolute. The game is over. That's absolute. The game is over. That's absolute. The game was over. The game was over. Where is he getting that 2 minutes from? Where the f is he getting that 2 minutes from? Where is he getting that 2 minutes from? The game was over. What the f is he doing? That is an absolute joke. That is an absolute joke. It was 94 minutes when the ball, when Liverpool literally, when the two Everton players ran to each other.
Welcome back to the Football Terrace. Hit the like button. Make sure you are subscribing. Lovely panel for you tonight. Henry is here. Dan is in the house. Egal is here with us. We're reviewing, of course, the Merseyside derby last night, previewing a very interesting weekend's worth of games, including maybe the biggest mid-off in the history of top six football, which is Spurs versus Manchester United. We're looking at the injury crisis that has not just hit Arsenal, but Man United and Chelsea also looking as stupid, as calamitous after this transfer window, and look like their attacking lines are in big trouble as well. Plus a discussion on the title race as well. But gentlemen, how are we all? We all good and well?
Yeah, good.
All good, mate. All good. Good game last night. Looking forward to the weekend. You know, the mid-off on Sunday is going to be good. But yeah, obviously, pleasure for having me on. I hope you two are both well and everyone in the chat. Well, you three, sorry.
You know what? I remember we were on the top six. I think the four of us plus Will, and we were talking about Everton versus Liverpool a couple of weeks ago. And you guys were laughing me off the screen when I said Everton are going to do something at Goodison Park, their last game at Goodison Park. I was making a whole thing about it, and you guys are like, "Get out of here!" And look at you guys now. Look very silly, don't you?
Yeah, I didn't see that coming. I'll hold my hands up. I didn't think Everton. I think Dicey was manager at that point, was he not?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. I think that's
and McAllister was out. Konate was out. Imagine those two guys missing in that game.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I think David Moyes completely changed the situation, though. I think David Moyes is working wonders at Everton currently.
Yeah, no, I do think that's played a part. I do think it's played a part. But I also get where Egal's coming from. I think if they played each other on that 12:30 kickoff back then with the injuries they had, I think that point Everton were on a little bit of a run themselves. They just won a game, and again, that's why a lot of people were frustrated that it was called off for a little bit of mild wind. When you consider how bad the weather was when Man United played Liverpool at Anfield, when you consider that was called off, I remember seeing videos from people and it was like maybe a bin fell over, a few leaves in the air, a couple of crisp packets. And look, I think for Liverpool as well last night, I don't know about you all, but they obviously put a lot of stock in resting players for that Plymouth game. I mean, we didn't really speak about it a lot on the show last night, but they rested a lot of players, Henry, for that Plymouth game, so they were able to win last night. They've not only had one of the biggest upsets in the Premier League era, one of the biggest giant killings this week, they've then lost it at the death to their bitter rivals. a slight lifeline in the transfer in the title race, which we'll get onto in a moment. But yeah, not a very good week really for Liverpool and Jurgen and Arne Slot.
No, like you said, they rested a lot of players against Plymouth. Didn't show the FA Cup the respect it deserved. Went out and fair play. Plymouth played really well. They defended as a team, as a unit, and deserved the win. And I think on the balance of play yesterday, Everton definitely deserved a draw. And it's two games where Liverpool, I know it's got two completely different teams that played in terms of Liverpool's personnel, but I don't think, other than maybe 2 or 3 chances, they didn't create a huge amount. You know, you come away from a Merseyside derby and Everton have had the better opportunities. Everton have had more shots at goal. So, and that's not great considering Liverpool had all their big guns fit and firing. I actually think, and I know it's easy to say now in hindsight, but I think Trent should have started this game. I think when they play Conor Bradley, don't get me wrong, he's better defensively, and he's much better in 1v1s. But when Trent come on, immediately Everton looked a little bit more shaky. He was playing that pass he plays to Darwin Núñez in the 65th minute, 2 feet. If Darwin has a better touch, he's in then. And he's one of the best crossers and passers of the football out there. But with all this being said, they are now an extra point clear of Arsenal. When you look at Arsenal's injuries, Kai Havertz, of course, today announced he's got to have surgery. There's talk of Meinro playing as a 9. They're still in the driving seat, even with this bad week. They're still clear favourites, and I do think they will win the league. Looking at it right now, but are we going to be looking back in May saying those 2 points is huge in this title race? Because if I think looking at this from the Arsenal,
do me a favour, please, Henry. Read the private chat, please, because we're going to come on to that a little bit later.
Okay, yeah, no worries.
Yeah, we'll come on to the title talk a little bit later. I want to keep it specific because this happens a lot on the show, and Liverpool fans complain that we never talk about their club. I want to try and keep this bit on Liverpool. Dan, what do you think Liverpool got wrong last night, or did they get anything wrong, and it was just Everton who stepped up to on the night for the derby?
I think both can be true. I think there's a lot more for reason for Everton to go on and push on to get that draw in the 90th, 97th minute, whatever it was, which I think some other teams might have already sort of conceded that they'd probably lose that game. I think really for me, I felt like Liverpool struggled. I don't know whether this comes down to the role Decore ended up playing in that game, but they really struggled to get Granvenberch on the ball and get him sort of dictating the play and the tempo like he's done. I felt like every time they tried to, that it was very limited from Everton. And Decore kind of played that role where he linked up well between the Liverpool midfield and obviously the defence, but linked up towards Beto. I think Beto ended up being an absolute handful for Van Dijk as well. I honestly was trying to think back to when I last saw Van Dijk tested in that sort of manner where 2 big athletic guys were pinning him. They were getting close to him. They were making his evening very, very difficult. And I have to say, that's probably one of the games where I've seen Van Dijk struggle the most. I don't think it was purely footballing ability, but I think athletically, they both challenged him. And I think that's something that a lot of players find difficult to do. So I think they're 2 massive points for me. But we saw obviously how good Salah was. Again, he was barely involved in the game in terms of what he was doing in terms of the build-up and things like that, but he still had 2 massive impacts in terms of their goals.
Who would you, just very quickly, I don't want to deviate too much, of KDB and Mo Salah, which is the biggest loss to Chelsea in European? Which of the 2 do you now look back on the most and go, we were absolutely stupid for getting rid of him? Which one of the 2 would you put at the top of that list?
Oh, it's difficult to say because obviously at the time we had players that were easily good enough to replace that. I'm just trying to think what we lacked going forwards as they've hit their peak. I mean, for me, I'd probably say Kevin De Bruyne. I know he's obviously struggled with injuries throughout his career, but every time I watched him play, he always had that something extra where he could unlock a defense no matter what the situation was. Whereas I feel like at times, I sort of feel like Salah's not so much disappeared in games because he always has moments, but I feel like he wasn't always running the show. He'll just sort of crop up. I only feel like it's only probably in his last few seasons we've seen him sort of become a little bit more of the creator, whereas I feel like he wasn't always having the biggest impact on games in terms of what he was doing. It was more just how efficient he was in terms of numbers. So I'll probably say KDB. Maybe we lack that a bit in years gone by.
That's fair. That's fair. Egal, obviously, a lot of the talk last night became about the referee. Liverpool fans having a meltdown today, saying they were robbed. Some of the decisions I totally get. A lot of fouls given against Liverpool throughout the course of the game. Very few fouls given against Everton retrospectively. Not retrospectively, given against them for the similar fouls. Obviously, they don't necessarily have an impact on the goals that went in. A lot of controversy with the goal. A lot of Liverpool fans saying it was offside. A lot of Liverpool fans saying there was a push on Konate and the goal shouldn't have stood. Do you think that Liverpool fans have a case that they were robbed last night by Everton, and more so Michael Oliver?
I find it interesting that they want to talk about refereeing decisions now, Terry, because it was only just a week ago they were telling me, don't talk about refereeing decisions, talk about your team's performance, hold your manager accountable, hold your players accountable, hold all these. You guys keep talking about holding people accountable and not talking about referees. But in that game, you know what? Refereeing decisions were poor, but I thought you guys said referees are bad for everybody. There's no agenda against Arsenal. There's no agenda against Liverpool. That's what you guys told us, right? So you guys got stuck with who's supposed to be one of the best referees in the league, and he messed up. This is the same guy who's messed up before, and unfortunately, the Premier League don't seem to be taking these refereeing mistakes serious. And Liverpool fans who are losing their heads, you guys were the same ones celebrating when Miles Skelly got his red card. So unfortunately, tribalism is never going to stop, and this is going to be ongoing, and these referees are never going to get held accountable. But from my perspective, they have a case. They're right. The refereeing decisions were a little bit questionable. The refereeing decisions were a little bit off. But really and truly, some of the things that you guys are asking for, like the goal to be chalked off, that's a very soft call, because there was a similar situation at the Arsenal game, Konate versus Gabriel Martinelli in the box, and that was not given as a penalty. You guys said he got the ball, even though he got minimal contact on the ball. We've seen a lot of questionable calls, but I don't think you guys have a case for the goal to be chalked off. As for the handball on Konate, I don't think that's a handball either. So those two decisions, I think the referee made the right decisions. But the ticky-tacky fouls, referees can be swayed and they can lose control of the game. And I think that's what happened. And that's mostly what pissed you off, is the fact that you drew in a derby where you had control of it. And you really could have just gone to the corner flag and held the ball. The same thing you guys made fun of Arsenal for doing versus Ipswich.
Is this video? Someone just sent me the video that you mentioned to me earlier, Egal, about Craig from the Anfield Agenda doing the wah wah cry when Lewis Skelly got sent off. Is that legitimately from when Lewis Skelly got sent off?
I don't remember if it's exactly when Lewis Skelly got sent off, but somebody sent that to me and said that this guy was doing this and now he's doing that. So I was assuming it was earlier this season.
That's fair. Yeah, look, I get where you're coming from. I feel that there were definitely decisions that went against Liverpool on the day. There's the foul for the first free kick. There's an angle that I've seen, and it looks like the shin was clipped. This is the crazy thing, right? I've seen fouls. This is what I love about football, this subjectivity of it. I've seen fouls given where the replays have been shown against my club, and the replay's been shown, and I've heard pundits, pros go, yeah, there's no contact, but there's only no contact because the player kind of jumps over the challenge, but it's still a foul because the player got nowhere near the ball. I'm not using that excuse. I'm just pointing out that people will pick and choose. My stance is the same as it was when there was no VAR for the FA Cup games. The same as it is for, I wouldn't call it a robbery if a team conceded a corner that wasn't, and then a goal scored from it. If VAR cannot intervene, I don't call it out so much, because referees have to give a snapshot decision in the moment, and mistakes happen. Mistakes happen. We've seen it many, many times. So I'm not overly focused when VAR can't get involved. But I look at the decisions at the end, the big one at the end. First of all, I've already addressed it today, and I'm sorry to the Football Terrace community that I was convinced of a lie. I had Liverpool fans last night tell me that Mo Salah was fouled in the build-up to the equaliser. I said at the time, I didn't see it. I said, I'm really sorry, I didn't see it. Maybe I was editing a thumbnail. Maybe I went to the toilet. I didn't see it. I'm sorry. Turns out it happened 7 minutes before the goal. But for some reason last night, when I say there was dozens and dozens of Liverpool fans, we had members of the panel sending me links, going, there it is, Terry. they gaslit me and convinced me that it was true. So I want to apologize, first of all, live on the air for getting that one wrong. I just trusted the Liverpool fans in our community on that. But I look at the little nudge, the little bit of contact on Konate, and I understand why the conceding team wants a foul, but I think it's a dangerous precedent to set giving that as a foul, personally. And I'm just trying to be as consistent as possible. I didn't think it was a foul when there was a goal Arsenal scored recently where someone made a challenge outside the box of the ball. I want to say it was against Liverpool. It might have been against Liverpool. Everyone and their dog said it was soft. So we're saying that that's a soft foul and shouldn't have happened. And then the world screaming today, oh, that should have been given as a foul. It's a slight nudge in the back. We celebrate when defenders.
That was a slight nudge?
It was a very slight nudge. Yeah, there's barely any force on it at all. We celebrate that when defenders do it, Will. So if the ball's coming, if a striker's coming in to header a ball and the defender can't get there, and as that attacker jumps, the defender pushes his back into him or jumps into him and knocks him off balance, what you hear from the commentators, what you hear from the pundits, and what you hear from the team who are defending is, oh, that was intelligent, it was sneaky. That's theoretically, that's a foul because you're not trying to play the ball, you're deliberately playing the player. That is all Beto did. I think it was Beto did in that scenario. And for me, I don't think there's enough there for a foul. It wasn't like he pushed him with, if he pushes him with two hands, if he drags his shirt, then maybe. But there was the player jumps, and all that happened to Konate is what I see happen to attackers every single corner and every single free kick on most crosses into the box. In that scenario, is a defender will lean into them as they jump, knock them off balance. It happens all the time, and we celebrate it. So for me, I thought it would have been a very soft foul to give.
Nah, but that wasn't a slight nudge. Like, he had force in there. Like, it's not like he slightly just like, got him off balance. Like, he lunged into the back of him while he was in the air. Like, that's a foul. I think if Konate was still on the ground, then fair. But like, he pushed him with force while he's in the air. Like, that's dangerous for the player as well, because you never know how he might land now that you pushed him off balance like that. I'm not necessarily saying that like Liverpool should be that upset about the refereeing decisions, even though there were some questionable ones. I still think that the defending for both of Everton's goals by Liverpool were awful. But that was a foul though on Konate. Like, I think saying that it's a slight nudge, it is a bit disingenuous because, like, he had force. Like, he almost fell over himself after he pushed Konate. That's not a slight nudge. Like, he did forcefully move him. So, I kind of do see that as a foul, but I still think that the defending in general, though, for that equalizer was just not good. So I think Liverpool fans, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with calling out the referees. But at the same time, I think that they should also be talking about how disorganized they looked for parts of that game as well.
Yeah, and I hear that, and I understand it. What I implore everybody to do, though, that thinks it's a foul, is apply that same. If it's a foul on the defender, would we agree if an attacker does that? If a defender does that to an attacker, it's a penalty. Are we all in agreement then?
Say it again. So
if we're going to agree with you, Will, and I'm willing to, are we going to say that all contact like that on an attacker is a penalty moving forward?
Well, I think if a player is defenseless, right? So, like, when somebody is starting to jump and they're in the air, if you push them, that should be a foul every single time.
And that, do you know what? And this is where it goes away from objectivity and subjectivity. Objectively speaking, I think you're right. I'm looking at this from the perspective that 99 times out of 100, those types of fouls in the box are not given. In the middle of the park, every single time, a little nudge, a little push is always given. Rarely do you see a penalty given to an attacker if a defender does that to them. So from my point of view, I'm not overly against it myself because I just think it's a nudge in the back. There is a bit of contact. And when they do it to an attacker, it's deemed, what's the word they use for it for defenders? They call it cultured. They say it's smart. Oh, that was intelligent. An attacker does it. No, it's brute force. It's a foul in the other direction. And I think defenders actually deserve a bit of their own medicine in that regard. So yeah, I'm not against it. And Omar, you may think it's stupid logic, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's stupid logic to say that this is a celebrated piece of defending and it's rarely, if ever, given as a foul to turn around and say, I think defenders should take it back. For me personally. So look, if Man United can see the penalty against Tottenham this weekend for a player doing it, I'll say it's a foul. I won't say it's a foul. If we concede a goal in this way, I'll keep the same energy. I'll keep the same energy. Now, if it's people in the comments saying he pushed him with two hands, he didn't. I'm just looking at it now. It was one arm like this. It wasn't two hands. That's different. What Joe Linton did to Gabriel, as an example, is it was two hands on his back to hold up his weight so he could head the ball. I think that is a foul in every single direction. So I do think there's a distinction there, Omar. There's a super chat here that says, yo, definitely okay to call out refs unless you're Arsenal. If Arteta did what Slot did, he'd be crucified. Yeah, what did you guys make? What did you make, Dan, of what, Henry, of what Slot did? He sort of shook his hand, but the reports are coming out that he squeezed the hand really tight, dragged him in and had a bit of a go at him. Do you think that's right for a manager to like physically accost the referee?
No, in that moment, the tensions are high. You've just conceded a very, a gut punch, haven't you? A last-minute goal. I think he's got every right to be frustrated and angry, but I think going about it like that probably isn't the right thing to do, considering you've just seen two players be sent off as well in that couple of minutes period. So no, Liverpool fans are gonna love it, but looking at it from an actual football fan, I wouldn't be happy if Ange did that. Like, I'd be like, what are you doing? Because now he's not going to be in the dugout for the Wolves. Does that mean he's not in the dugout for the Wolves game? If I'm right, because that's
yeah, I'm not too sure. When it comes
it's
to
one game, right?
It is, but when it comes to managers, sometimes they get these red cards, and it takes a game or two for them to process it. Do you get what I mean? So,
he's either not going to be in the dugout against Wolves or Villa, and that could cause.
They've got a tough week next week. Liverpool. It's Villa away,
I think
City
it's
away.
stupid, to be honest with you, Terry. I think it's stupid.
City away, maybe not that hard. I suppose Wolves.
Like, run in the dressing room with all your players by all means, but don't go out right in front of a ref that's already card happy, who's just sent off two players. I think that's the wrong thing to do, personally.
Yeah, he gripped him up. He gripped him up for me, and
I don't agree with with what you're saying, Henry. I don't think that Slot did anything wrong. He gave him a firm handshake.
Nah.
I don't.
He must have said something, bro.
Like Michael Oliver,
apparently according to lip readers, he said great game. That's what
he must have said something.
Well, what? So Dan just said that according to lip readers, he said great game, maybe sarcastic.
And it was
so
mistaken.
So now it's like he hurt Michael Oliver's feelings. So now let me give you a red card. That to me, I think that is crazy.
That's what refs do, bro. Are you not used to this?
No, yes, but Terry asks, like, how do we feel about it? I feel like that's nonsense. He shook your hand firmly, like you're a man.
Yeah,
I
disagree.
I've seen Arteta get a match ban for celebrating.
I hear you, but let's be blunt. Right? So Liverpool fans last night, when they saw it, they celebrated I won't say aggressive, because everyone's calmed down now and they won't like me using that word. They celebrated the assertive nature of Slot's approach. I just think as men, especially when and I mean this as a man thing, and I'm sorry if it sounds sexist, we shake hands a lot on a regular basis most of our lives. Women do in the workplace, but women, when girls meet each other, when girls have arguments, when girls meet someone about a row, they don't shake hands, typically speaking. There'll be a hug or no hug. It says a lot. Men, we shake hands, right, on a regular basis. We can all tell the difference between a good game and where someone's getting aggressive or assertive, sarcastic. And he grabs his hand very tight, and you see the way there's a very famous boxing face-off between two British fighters, Carl Froch and George Groves. And there's a bit where they go to shake hands, and George Groves pulls him over the table, and then embarrassingly for Grovesy, Froch pulls him back the other way, and he goes, "We could all have a bit of push and a pull." They weren't pulling as hard as that last night, but you see it. The way he grips his hand, that is not how you shake someone's hand. If you are not trying to send a message. And by the way, Liverpool fans celebrated in doing it last night. No, because you can't do that to a referee.
Bro, he shook his hand firmly.
Nah,
but Terry, it's like
he can talk to him after the game.
But it's not like Slot walked up to him, super aggressive, slapped him, and then grabbed his hand and pulled him in. Bro, he shook his hand firmly. Dan saying that the lip he probably said like nice or like good game sarcastically. Michael Oliver is being soft. Oh my God, he squeezed my hand a little bit. Red card. I feel like that should.
I don't think people disagree with you. I don't think
Nah,
people
people
disagree
do.
with you in saying that the red card is kind of ridiculous. But this is not something that's going to get rescinded because
No,
the
but
man.
it might not. But that's the problem with the refereeing stuff is because referees should have to answer for why they give certain decisions. Like we always talk about why are things so wrong? Why was this call made? Like just
but you know why they don't?
Refs have to do post-game interviews if they're requested to.
How far, Will, sorry, Will, what's your limit? What's your limit on physically accosting a ref? How far can you go when it comes to, like, how hard can you pat them on the back? Can you push them, headlock, body slam? Like, how far can
all right, well, let's not carry it.
How far can you take it, in your opinion?
All right, so like if Slot would have walked up to him and slapped the shit out of him, okay, then I'd say, all right, you know what? Like maybe like let's not assault the referee. But bro, you giving him a firm handshake, right? Michael Oliver is a grown man. He's not 10 years old. He's a little kid. But you gave him a firm handshake. You probably said a word. Like things like that just happen in life if people are not happy with what's going on. To me, that instance, there should have been nothing given for that. Now, if it's something more physical, like he put him in like a headlock or I don't know, like RKO'd him or something.
Can you imagine?
That like okay, now it's a different conversation.
If that happened,
that you cannot be that
they would send him. They would send him
referee.
out of the league, bro. The way the referees and the FA would ban him for like months if anything physical ever happened. I think that is the most he could have done to show that he was frustrated. And if the referee deemed that as disrespectful and he gives a red card, that is his prerogative. I think it's wrong. I think he shouldn't have given the red card.
Yeah.
But I get why he gave the red card. And I think Arne Slot should be smarter. He shouldn't lose his cool. And he should put himself in a situation where he speaks to him because they're allowed to speak behind closed doors. Arne Slot made it a statement to go up to him and do that handshake and in front of the camera.
Nonsense, right?
In front of the camera.
It's
not woke nonsense. He could have spoke to him after the game.
Will, to me as a man, this ain't woke nonsense. If I've annoyed someone, okay, rightly or wrongly, whether I'm in the right or the wrong, if I've annoyed someone and they come to shake my hand and that shake is very tight and into me and they make a message when they do it, we're probably having a fight. It sends a message in real life that the way you shake a man's hand sends a very, very, very clear message. I don't think we should ignore that. By the way, I understand Slot was emotional. I think that he has done what a lot of people would do. I remember one of my football managers in Sunday League, he got annoyed. He didn't shake the referee's hand. The referee walking away, he got banned for life for this. He was no longer allowed to manage football. He booted the ball at the ref, like in the back of his head as he was walking off. And I remember watching it. I weren't next to it. I was on the other side of the pitch.
Was it an accident?
No. The referee said it's my the goal was offside. My decision's final. The ref walked about 5-6 yards away, and we all just watched him. We just watched Carl pick the ball up. And he just, like a goalkeeper clearing it, and just left and booted it. And he just hit the keeper and hit the ref in the back of the head. And it was it. He was done. He got done. So
did he own it, or did he say sorry right away?
No. He tried to. No. He tried to defend himself by saying he's trying to boot the ball down the other side of the pitch. But again, none of us G'd him up. But watching it now, it's all done with 20 odd years ago. It happened. You know what I mean? But that was a mad fight. That happened. And then the other team were kicking off. And I remember one guy in the other team going, I'm going to get my pit bulls. And I was like, this is getting a little bit out of hand. And I started the whole thing off because I should have got sent off and I didn't. And it escalated from there. Within 10 minutes, it was just Sunday.
I have a theory, Terry.
It's mad.
I have a theory. And this happened to Arsenal. After Everton, where Mikel Arteta came out and said the whole Disgracia thing, he was targeted. And the way I know he was targeted, he was given a match ban for accumulation of over-celebrating, because they couldn't ban him for actually saying Disgracia because he beat that case. And eventually we've seen Arsenal getting harsh calls to the point where to the point where Aston Villa away, we had egregious calls called against us to the level where players were getting kicked in their Achilles and in the box, and they're not giving penalties. So Liverpool, be careful, because if you poke the bear, these referees, they do hold grudges, and they are humans.
I agree. I agree with that. There's a few super chats here. First one from Total Red says, no punishment has been given, FYI. The FA read the ref report and give the punishment. Yeah, I think that's right for referee. That's what I thought for manager to get red cards. It's not like a a player's red card, and it can be appealed. Slot will manage the Wolves game as it stands. Yeah, that was my understanding, my friend, of how that works in that regard. Don delusional level. He's the leader of high standards. Don who? Don Hussam? Don Lusional. The best name they ever had for Don. I love Don, but the best name they have for him on here is Condon. Is any cons people? It was one of the best nicknames I ever heard someone give him. Today's statement: 2-game ban, then deleted the post. Who deleted it? You've got to be more specific, Omar. I don't know who you're quite referring to, my friend. No hard feelings, but every time Egal is on, it makes me smile. Egal equals a German word meaning doesn't matter.
Yeah, so what? Everything has a different meaning in different countries.
This is true. This is true. This is true. Slot shakes my hand like that. He's going to sleep. But that's also true. The thing is, Will, I know, Will, you're from Jersey. I know if a man 6'2" Will gets his hand shaken like that in an altercation, I know Will is throwing the head. He's giving the people's elbow. Will's having it. I know you're a bit of an anime geek. I know you're an anime geek, but I think that you can scrap a bit as well. You definitely like anime.
You know what's crazy, bro? It's like I think like Oliver should have just said something back to him and then just keep it at that. Again, like
bro, we don't know what they said to each other.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I feel like the red card is for what's been said rather than the handshake, though.
But then you just said that lip readers said that Slot said like good game or something. Right?
Yeah, I feel like
lip readers aren't always accurate.
If you watch the clip, right, Slot is non-stop talking the whole time he's shaking his hand. So if he said something that Oliver didn't agree with, it might have just been the whole thing packaged together was just too much for Oliver to think.
Yeah, maybe Slot's starting to feel some pressure. Because he's like,
I think Slot learned yesterday, one, what that game is really, and two, I think he learned a lot about the Premier League and how hard it can be as a manager to like control yourself with the referees when you feel like things are going against you.
Yeah. No, I do agree with that. Why didn't Pep get a red for worse? What did he do that was worse? You have to remind me.
Pep went up to the referee and said, "Thank you."
Really aggressively as well.
Yeah. No, the thing is, what I will say, and this is in fairness to Slot, the more high profile the manager, sometimes the harder it is for them to take it out on them but it's like that. I think that element works in all walks of life. Like people always, there are people out there. There are YouTubers that do it. I'd tell anybody to their face what I think. Well, it depends who that person is. Because I bet you wouldn't say it to Anthony Joshua. Like, as an example, right? We've seen it with Arsenal fans that wanted Wenger out, right? They were on the fan cams. They hated him. Then they bumped into him and they're like, "Oh, Wenger, hello, how are you?" We've seen everybody's energy is different in real life, you know. If he cussed, release the audio. Simple. Why too long? I understand that, Omar. Absolutely ridiculous. He's supposed to be a leader. He should have be made an example of, is what Colton Conroy said. I agree, Conroy. Ban him for the rest of the season, Slot. Get him out for the rest of the season.
Terry, I just have to say this. As an Arsenal fan, everyone is saying if Arteta did that, it would be spoken about for the next 20 days. It would be in a news cycle and it would be circulating. You have Gary Neville and what's his name? Jamie Carragher already on the overlap talking about how much of a disgrace Arteta is. But you're not going to hear any of that.
Yeah, Carragher is gonna say niente at all. Konate didn't complain either. Did the Liverpool players? But that was the thing for me as well. I like to look at player reaction. None of them appealed the foul in real time, and then afterwards you go back and watch it. They're talking about the offside. They're saying it's offside. They're not talking about the foul either. They're not saying he put like Slot did. To be fair, I saw Slot doing this, but the players were talking about the offside as far as I could see. But yeah, for me, I mean, we'll see it differently. But there we go. Viewers, we're going to come back to the title race a little bit later in the show. Make sure you've hit the like button. Make sure you are subscribing. We're going to have a debate about that and preview the games. We've seen Arsenal's injuries this week, and we'll get onto that in the title race debate and conversation later. But it turns out, you know, as we said on the terrace, both Man United and Chelsea, I think, had equally disgraceful windows, different scenarios and different contexts of their seasons, but both should have strengthened and didn't do enough. But now Chelsea, Dan, he hasn't been great recently, but it looks like you're going to be missing Nicholas Jackson for the vast majority of the remainder of the season. You obviously let João Felix go out, and it did look in the last few games like you were looking light at the top. But a bit of trouble for you in terms of the attacking line right now, Chelsea. And, you're in a really bad rut at the minute.
Yeah, it's the last thing we needed with the type of form that we've been in. I think a lot of Chelsea fans were very vocal about Chelsea needing a striker before there was an injury to Mark Guy and Nicholas Jackson. The fact that now both are injured.
Oh, he's out as well.
Yeah, he is. So there's talks about Palmer or Neto potentially playing as the false nine. I don't know what will happen. I think there might be a slight tweak to the system to accommodate that. I think Chelsea did it a few years ago with Hazard. He played there, obviously, with Pedro and Willian, and they kind of did like a fluid front three. I wonder if it'll be something like that. But yeah, I mean, the issue is that Jackson wasn't exactly like on form going into this injury that he's picked up. Mark Guy obviously is only an 18-year-old, and there was probably too much pressure on him to be a backup to that role. But yeah, and Kunku might play as the 9, but I think that experiment for me is pretty much over now. I just think he's shown he's not good enough as an out-and-out 9 to keep playing there. So yeah, difficult times going into that Brighton game that we've got tomorrow on the back of just getting knocked out to the FA Cup.
So Dan, you no longer have the best squad depth in the league.
I think no. I think after January, no. I think Chelsea letting 5 players go.
Receipts.
No, well, no. I think going into the season, Chelsea had a fantastic array of numbers to use throughout the Premier League. I think going into post-January and the run-in, we've now not got that because we let 5 players go. We've picked up injuries. Chelsea still have Nkunku, who could play as a 9, who they felt was a striker. They've still got a number of players that can replace players if they're injured. We've still got 3 or 4 wingers that can play and swap players out.
The question is, do you have quality or do you have quantity?
No, but I think we've always had quantity over quality though since this squad has been built. I think Chelsea have done a fantastic job at buying an amount of players. I don't think they've all been good enough.
Okay.
And I think I've been pretty consistent saying that throughout the season because I don't think Chelsea's squad has ever been.
There was a point where you were saying your squad is up there as the best squad in the league.
I think maybe the best squad because what Chelsea were able to do, obviously, with the Conference League was literally rest a full 11 to maintain a challenge.
The standard was so low, bro.
Pardon?
The standard of
yeah, but okay, so forget the standard, right? I hear what you're saying, and it is important in the conversation. But what it allowed Chelsea to do was rotate a full 11 to make sure that they were ready to go for their next game. So he almost had 2 groups to work with for each fixture, meaning that the injury sort of problems that we'd had the season before would hopefully be eradicated. They've kind of blurred the lines now that a few injuries are creeping in. But on the whole, I think we've dealt with the injuries a lot better than we did last year.
About
I think what it showed is that when you started playing 2 games a week in the Premier League, you weren't able to maintain it because of the quality in your second team is not good enough to actually play in the Premier League. They're able to play in the Conference League because it's a little bit slower, a little bit easier for them. The opponents are not as fast, not as physical. But when you try to play some of these squad players that you play in the Conference League, like the guy who came from Leicester, I forget his name right now. Shrewsbury Hall, he doesn't have a good performance.
I think it's harsh to say, Egal. Like I understand what you're saying, and I don't think they're as good as the first 11. But I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that they probably haven't been tested against good enough opposition. I think we're being incredibly harsh against players like João Felix and Kunku.
I'm not being harsh. Your manager.
I mean Sancho being rotated in and out. These are Shrewsbury Hall's played Premier League before, obviously with Leicester. I think these players, Tosin's obviously played game after game for Fulham in the Premier League. There are players at Chelsea who have been good enough, but I think what we forget about here is how important momentum, consistency of playing with each other is. Those players have barely played in the Premier. I think João Felix left Chelsea with 3 Premier League starts this season, so they only had 1 or 2 games in the Premier League as a rotated squad in and out.
Dan, I'm not.
They also won one of those games against Southampton.
I'm not judging them on their name. I'm not judging them on what little football I've seen from them. I'm judging them based on how much the manager trusts them to rotate them in these important games. So during this tough period where you've been losing, dropping points, drawing left, right, and center, I've been seeing the manager.
The majority of those games ago have been with our starting 11. I would say only Ipswich was the game really where there was a little bit of rotation and they probably didn't do it.
Isn't that directly saying?
It might
concern me
the manager. I don't believe Chelsea's starting 11 is good enough, let alone the rotation options.
In your next 10 games, you've got Fulham, Spurs, Arsenal.
We've struggled in our easiest run of fixtures throughout the season. So
Dan, do you agree? That the
I just
manager
think
doesn't
it is
trust
what it
these
is.
guys?
I think Chelsea's squad was built well in terms of numbers. It's been drastically weakened off the back of January, and I think Chelsea are in a worse position going into the end of the season. I'm not denying that at all.
No, but do you agree that your manager might not trust some of these second B
Yeah,
teams?
I think the trust was broken when we went out of the League Cup to Newcastle. I think the trust has been broken going out to Brighton in the FA Cup. I think there were probably players forced upon him. I don't think he was that keen on João Felix ever coming to the club to be part of his team. I think that's why João Felix was limited to so few starts for the amount that he obviously cost to bring in. And I think that's an issue, isn't it? When the squad's built without real proper plan and discussion with the manager, then I think those sort of issues can arise. And yeah, I think there is some doubt over whether or not some of those players are good enough to be representing Chelsea. But I also think, and Slot said exactly the same about Liverpool, these players are good enough to win some of those games they're playing in. It's whether or not they do their job.
I think that it's more of a Maresca problem, though, Dan, because I think Chelsea do have a good squad. I mean, like, obviously, I hear like what you're saying now with the injuries and what happened in January, that going into the second half, it's not as good. But I view it as more of a manager issue, right? Like how when Egal just asked you, well, do you think that he doesn't trust some of those squad players? And you said, well, the Newcastle L. Well, that's on the manager, right? Like, why would you play a completely different starting 11 against Newcastle, right? I feel like that's where he's showing his inexperience. I don't think that he's managed you guys properly at all, even with the Conference League. Now, I know that the Conference League is like really low competition for a club of your level, but like to just play one team on Thursday, one team Sunday, like not really making any rotations, not using what was on the bench, right? I feel like that's more of the manager's inexperience and his lack of understanding how to manage a big squad, which is why I think maybe you could have the conversation that that Maresca is not the right manager for Chelsea, because maybe you do need a manager with more experience, that's more proven, that has been at the top level for a while, that will know how to deal with a squad of that size so that he can keep a lot of these players in form instead of freezing them out. And then all of a sudden now you want to just bring them back in. And now when they don't perform at a high level, now it's like it's their fault. So for me, I view it more as Maresca's fault than the players that he has available to him, to be honest. And now it's going to be interesting to see like what you guys do with your striker position, because Jackson's gone. I don't know how long Mark Gui's is out for, but yeah,
longer than Jackson, I believe.
Longer than Jackson, yeah. So now he has to get creative, right? Maybe you guys switch up the formation and you play like Nkunku, like a false nine.
False nine.
We're not, but I think Nkunku should be a false nine.
I think Nkunku false nine would be an option to have runners in behind.
But that's what he was doing basically at Leipzig. Yeah. Like he was never a nine. He always played as like a second striker kind of when he was in Germany. That's what Chelsea bought him for. And then just Cole Palmer's emergence has basically forced Nkunku to hold bench. But Nkunku was supposed to be the guy, but then he got the injury. So I think maybe you use him as a false nine. Then maybe you could even move Cole Palmer back onto the right wing and then maybe have him kind of like invert while Nkunku does like the hold up. Maybe that could work. But I think you guys still do have a good enough squad to where you should still be competitive regardless. It's just on your manager. That's how I view it.
Yeah, I hear that, by the way. I think Maresca's probably proved that he's incredibly stubborn and the last thing he wants to do is adapt. And now I think his hand's been forced. So it'll be interesting to see what he does and how he adapts, because I don't think he's been able to adapt to any situation so far he's facing the Prem.
I've seen one thing from Maresca. He's changing the expectations. Today, I seen that interview where he's speaking about, first he was speaking about getting knocked out the cup might be a blessing because now you can focus on top four and what do you call it and Conference League. But now he's saying top four was never the goal. He's saying Champions League football in 2 years was the goal, almost setting you guys up in case you don't get top four to not be upset.
But I don't think that could be on the manager, though, right? Because if the club hierarchy are saying something different, then there's no way that the manager.
No, there's mixed messages, bro. As a rival, I seen them say they sacked Poch because of top four, and now they're saying top four is not the goal. 2 years.
Well, yeah, but like maybe the message from like the ownership is changing. Because like there's no way that the owners are saying we need top four, we need to win trophies, and then the manager comes out and says, nah, maybe top four is not.
Okay, so there are proven posts and tweets.
So let me read this out for the audience. Right, sorry, gents, to jump in here. So this is what I saw someone post this earlier on today and was going to bring it up. So it's a great segue anyway. But it says, It says we've got Maresca saying top 4 wasn't the target, Stewart saying Champions League is a must, and Cucurella recently saying that top 4 is non-negotiable. Does anyone at Chelsea have like sat in the same meeting, in the same group chats? And I suppose what is the message to Chelsea fans? And Dan, how do Chelsea fans read this? Are you all just now going to say, well, coming 6th is okay? Or do you feel that coming 6th, winning no trophies outside of the Conference League is acceptable? How do you as fans see it, mate?
I think the fans will view it as unacceptable. I think fans believe Chelsea should be finishing at minimum in the top 4 and winning trophies. And I think Maresca's going to fail to do both of those this season. He might win the Conference League, but I think that is probably... Chelsea fans are probably a little bit less confident when it comes to the Conference League now than where they were a month ago, 2.5 months ago. Like, I think if we were to slip in that under Maresca, I don't think Chelsea fans would be 100% shocked. Like, I think they could see it happening because, like, we've slipped against teams like Ipswich, who I believe are probably worse than teams who are competing to go and win the Conference League. And we've seen teams like Aston Villa in that competition before slip up to Olympiacos. So I think Chelsea right now, as a fan base, will be really disappointed in what Maresca's been saying. And I think a lot of Chelsea fans hold him accountable for the downfall this season, purely on mentality and what he said. He wrote off the title race when no one else did at the club. He said we weren't in one. He said a number of times now that it wasn't his expectation to get top 4. Well, I'm sorry, if you think you're coming into Chelsea and you don't think Champions League is important to a team that has spent 1.6 billion, then I think you're delusional in the job that you've taken, no matter what someone says to you or not. I think secretly they would be expecting you to outperform what you might have been told. But I don't believe what he's saying, because I think it's been clearly put into writing from Lawrence Stewart that this is a team that needs to be in the Champions League. And I think off the back of last season, the rebuild didn't need to completely start again. And I think going for a championship manager might have meant that happened.
I think that you have to be careful, Dan, with your club's future. I think that Chelsea are going to become a selling club just based off the links like that I'm seeing and just everything. Say again?
I think Chelsea already are now a selling club, because I think the intention's already been clear with a number of players that have come in January have already been moved on. The problem is they've failed to sell them because Chelsea aren't doing well enough to up the value of the players that they've bought in and make profit on them in a short amount of time. I think they've fallen into a false sense of security when they saw the amount of money they got for Havertz, Mount, even like Kovacic, Lewis Hall. But they were players that had been part of a Champions League winning team. They've been part of a very reputable Chelsea. The players now are part of a Chelsea team that have been in decline over the last few seasons. It's a complete and utter mess, and no one really knows what's going on at Chelsea, in or out of the club, apparently, like we've seen from the tweets today. And I think Chelsea will struggle as a club now to generate the type of money they have on certain players in terms of selling them. I think they're really going to struggle, and I think you'll see a lot more loans and loan fees rather than selling until the players actually perform. João Felix cost 50 million. There's not a chance they recoup that.
Do you think Cole Palmer, if you don't get Champions League this season, will be thinking, well, this is 2 or 3 years of Champions League football, and there isn't a huge amount of growth in the team? Is he going to be looking around? I know he's just signed that, 8 or 9 year contract, or something like that.
Death row contract.
Yeah, like surely he's not going to want to carry on not playing Champions League football.
I think, I think money talks, and if a team offer enough money for it to be converted into profit on the books, Chelsea would consider selling him. I think any player...
What's enough money for you, Dan?
I don't know if it's for me, but I think for the board, the fact that they've bought him for 40 million, if they could 3-4 times the asset that they've bought for 40 million and turn it into 150, 140, something like that, I think that would get them thinking about the sale. I don't think any player at Chelsea is protected from being sold, to be honest with you. I think if there was profit to be made on any of the players, I think they'd be open to a conversation about it. I think we've seen that with some players that have been incredibly loyal to the club as well. I think Palmer will probably see how the season ends. If Chelsea are drastically off the back of the top 4 or 5 that might make Champions League football, he might start to assess his options, because how can a player as good as him be away from the Champions League now for what it could be 2-3 seasons? If it's maybe gives it one more chance, but I don't think Cole Palmer will be at Chelsea if they continue to be out of the Champions League. I think it's as simple as that. He's too good to not be in it.
Do you feel that Chelsea fans will completely lose faith with Bowley, with Clearlake, with the project, if they see a player like Palmer sold 2 to 3 years after he's come in, he's been a shining light. He's been a brilliant player. If he gets sold because of the profit element, do you think that's it for most Chelsea fans back in Clear Lake?
Yes, I don't think there are many left, and I think it would probably be. I don't have the facts on this, but there's definitely been a shift at Chelsea between Bowley running the show to now Egbali. There's definite comments that have been made to suggest that that's now the case, and I think a lot of Chelsea fans are really at wit's end when it comes to the ownership currently. And I don't think it has to be as drastic as suggesting the ownership need to leave. I think Chelsea are open as a club that if the ownership were to sort of hold their hands up and say, look, we tried something, it didn't work, we're going to move in a different direction now, I think the fan base would be willing to accept that, sort of move on. I don't think you need to be saying out, as some people are already vocalizing their opinions. But yeah, selling players that are key to results is never going to go down well. But unfortunately, if you keep missing out on Champions League football, you keep failing to attract front of shirt sponsors, you keep spending money that you're not making in terms of revenue, you're going to have to generate that money from some way. We've got a way with selling hotels, assets that the club already has. What happens when those assets aren't available to sell anymore? Your assets are then your playing staff, and they're going to have to go to generate the profit Chelsea need to run.
That's fair. The thing is, right, in a hypothetical world, if Cole Palmer leaves, in my opinion, the Chelsea project is over in terms of all the momentum that you guys have had. Because I think Cole Palmer is arguably the single biggest reason why a lot of people were optimistic about Chelsea heading into this season. If you remove Cole Palmer from that team, I don't think that you guys are in a top 4 conversation. And I don't think that you would be even earlier in the season in the title race conversation. Like, Cole Palmer is so important to the project. Like, I feel like he would have to be untouchable, right? Like, he just signed that death row contract. His soul is gone, right? 9 more years, like, on his contract. You can't sell him. There should be no price at which Cole Palmer is available for, because if he leaves, it's over. Because who would you be able to bring in and attract? Because if he just left because of no Champions League football, he's seeing another 15-year-old midfielder from Ecuador be signed when you still need a striker, and he says, I'm out of here. Let's say you get $150 million for Cole Palmer. Who would you use that money on that would come in and that could also still have that same level of performances? Because if Cole Palmer is moving, then other players are going to look at it and say, well, why would I want to go there?
Why join Chelsea? Listen, I don't think...
Hang on, sorry, Gal, sorry. You can't just say that and then move on. Why would Wirtz, if... We've got to remember here now, this is the thing for viewers. We're talking about the world that Will has just created.
Yeah.
So the project's failed, Palmer's gone, the team's in trouble because it's 2 or 3 4 years without Champions League football. Why would Wirtz, with the world at his feet, choose Chelsea in your opinion over the other clubs that are currently heavily linked to him?
Yeah, Chelsea that are in crisis out of the Champions League at that point.
I think Chelsea, if they get Champions League football, they're still a big draw. I think Chelsea are not as bad as everyone makes them out to be. In this hypothetical world, stop. 1 second, I'm about to answer the question.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. But you've missed something. You've just spoke about them being in the Champions League. The world is no Champions League, and Palmer's gone. So that you've got your answer's got to be in that world. Not
Chelsea are finishing like 8th in the Premier League.
If Chelsea still Cole Palmer, they're going to replace him with somebody of high value. They're not going to
though, Egal, but
why would Ecuador?
Because Chelsea, even at their worst, they were able to attract Caicedo. They're able to attract Enzo. They're able to spend this type of money in 12th. So what makes you think
from smaller clubs?
All of a sudden, if they do sell Cole Palmer, that they won't bring in a big fish to replace him? I don't think everything at Chelsea is doom and gloom like some of you guys are saying.
Well, Wirtz isn't even on the level.
And I don't think Cole Palmer is going anywhere. But hypothetically, if he did, I think out of any club, out of Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, out of those, even Man United, out of those clubs, the one club that I know that will take whatever they have in their pocket and get it out to get that player is Chelsea. So let's not act like Chelsea have not done crazy things before. To get Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez in the position that they were in, to get Enzo Fernandez after the World Cup where he was the best young player is just as big as trying to get.
No, wait.
Right now.
But Egal, what other club was gonna go drop 105 million for Enzo Fernandez in the middle of the season? They massively overpaid for him.
So what? So you don't think they're going to overpay for the next player?
No, hold on, wait.
I don't think they have the money. I genuinely don't. I think the money that's been spent for Chelsea was money that was put aside from when they purchased the club, that Roman was made sure it was a guarantee that would be reinvested into the club over the next 10 years. It's been done in about 2.5, 3 years. I genuinely don't see another 1.6 billion or the level of spending happening again unless they believe there is guaranteed profit to be made on those players. I don't think we'll see. I'll be shocked if we do, but I don't think we'll see the likes of Casado and Enzo deals happening again, because I actually don't believe Egbali is moving in that way. I think Todd Boehly was, and I think they've sort of decided that now the money isn't there to be made off the back of those type of signings.
You can't keep spending like that though. Sorry, Egal. You can't. And Man United are proof in that. We're going to get onto United in a minute. Are proof in that pudding. We spent like that fairly regularly, and we've got more of an income than Chelsea have, and always have done. So therefore, there is more cash to spend. But we have come to the end of that side, and I'm not happy with the way we're operating. I'm not happy with the redundancies. But I was reading a really terrifying financial report that if it wasn't for the injection of cash from Radcliffe and Co., the club was close to going bankrupt. Now, you can read that two ways. You can read it as they've bowed the Glazers out, or you can read it as they've saved the football club from bankruptcy. It depends on your perspective. But there isn't the money to start dropping 80 millions on Maguire's and money for Di Maria's and the salaries for the Alexis Sanchez in the short term. What you have to do is you have to scale down, and you have to buy cheaper players and try and develop people. And that's why it's going to take 3 or 4 years to potentially build a team that's good enough to win the league title, because the funds ain't there. Now, if we make the Champions League next year by winning the Europa League, that changes it, because that's an injection of cash, and you can take a bit more of a risk and say, let's try and get Gyökeres then, as an example, who could elevate you quicker. But the problem is with Chelsea, they have spent...
What? You just jumped off.
Terry's Wi-Fi's cut out again.
Yo, before Terry was speaking, I was going to say, Dan, I don't think Chelsea are that far away. I think people are doing the doom and gloom thing, because Chelsea's been dropping points recently, and they're looking at the recent performances. But you have a good core. Terry, before you wanted to continue?
No, man, you go. Go.
I was just saying, I don't think everything's doom and gloom at Chelsea. They have a good core. Caicedo, Enzo, Cole Palmer. They have a decent midfield to build around. The defense is very young. If you can improve the defense, get a better goalkeeper, and get a proper forward player that can get you goals, you have yourself a good shell of a team that could be fighting up there at the top of the table and get back into Champions League quite quickly and do something in the Champions League maybe in a year or two. I don't think you're that far away from being a competitive team. People are almost making it seem like because you've dropped points recently, you've had a couple of injuries, and you still don't know if this manager is going to be the manager of the future, that everything's just going to reset. I think Chelsea is closer to being a competitive team than they are to resetting again, because their age of their player, the contracts of those players, and the fact that you, when you think about it, some of these players that they have only just started to be playing with each other consecutively. We haven't seen Lavia play a season.
So like, and I hear what you're saying, because that was my logic when I was backing Chelsea heading into this season. Right?
What made you change?
Based off the direction that they've been going in terms of the profile of players that they're looking at when it comes to like transfers, for example, right? Because I agree. I think with the current squad that Chelsea have, they're not far away. But then look at that January window, right? Again, we all know they need a striker, they need a center back, you need a goalkeeper. They don't address it. They chase Garnacho, another winger. On deadline day, they signed some midfielder from France that I've never heard of, right? I can't tell you that the board want to actually build a team to compete. That's why I said to Dan, I think that Chelsea are just going to try to become a selling club, because it looks like they're just trying to find assets that they can flip instead of building a winning team. Because if you're trying to build a winning team, if I know that and you know what they need, the board obviously know the weaknesses, and they've done nothing about it. So Chelsea, that's kind of making me.
There's one more thing I want to mention. In their process of developing, Chelsea have also acquired one of the biggest talents in Brazil, who's supposed to come next season. So imagine he comes in, hits the ground running. Now you guys know I hate Chelsea, but I'm not going to sit here and act like everything they're doing is ridiculous.
But again, they don't need him
because they have gotten a good core in the middle. If you have yourself a good solid midfield and they had a quality goalkeeper this season, we would not be questioning anything about Chelsea right now. I genuinely believe Chelsea are 2 or maybe 3 players away max from being a serious competitive team.
But they're signing they're signing high potential players. But it's like you said, so like Estevan William, he looks like an amazing young player in Brazil, but he's a winger. They don't need a winger.
They need a winger. What are you talking about?
So yeah, listen, Egal, I'm not.
I think they don't need a right winger necessarily. They need a striker.
Egal, there's an element of truth to what you're saying. There's an element of truth to what you're saying. But the point, it can also there's a crossroads right now that I think both arguments hold water, but there's a crossroads because what we're talking about is a team that's now sort of saying top 4 isn't a must and Champions League isn't a must. We can't remember the premise in the beginning of this conversation, but if they go another year, maybe 2 without that Champions League football, do they have the money to buy those 3 or 4? Because what they now need is, you're right, is superstars, top class players to come in and join their team. A lot of us said in December, out of everyone going into the January window, it's Chelsea are the most likely to go, do you know what, barring City, of course, to go, do you know what, boom, we've got a chance here of a title run. Let's go. So-and-so, let's go. They didn't do it. And if they don't make Champions League, there's no way they can maintain the spending that they've started. And that isn't me being a salty rival. That's simply looking at the turnover and the income and the trading accounts that they're operating in. There's nothing they can do about it. And PSR is now staying for another year. And clubs like Villa, clubs like Man United, clubs like Chelsea are going to be impacted by that. And there may be enough to go at it one more time for Chelsea. There may be enough to go, you know what? This gamble one last time. But if that gamble's big and they lose and they don't make the Champions League, then they're in a world of trouble and they're going to have to sell. And it's a harder thing then to do, to sell to players, to say, well, not challenge for the Premier League for the best part of 10 years. It's 3 or 4 years without Champions League football. We're close to PSR situation. Doesn't mean Chelsea won't sign players, because Chelsea are a massive football club. Even before Roman, they were signing top quality players. But there's a difference between being a very good team and being one of the world's best. And it may take time. And as Dan pointed out, it may need a new reset where they go, right, we've got to go about it in a different way now because this hasn't worked. And it's going to be very interesting watching Chelsea. In terms of their game, how do you see the game going, Henry, for Chelsea this Saturday when they play, Friday, tomorrow when they play Brighton?
Yeah, I've got a feeling they're going to lose again. It's away again, isn't it, Dan? Yeah, I don't know what the best front three available for Chelsea is right now. People are saying, do they put Palmer out on the right or keep him in the 10? Are you going to play Nkunku in the false 9? I've just got a feeling the fact that they are a little bit light up front. They weren't great against West Ham. Was it a deflected goal from Palmer?
Yeah.
You know,
even against Brighton, the goal was a deflected goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've just got a feeling there. And I've just looked at their fixtures. There's a lot of tough games in there. You got Arsenal, Brentford away, Spurs. I mean, you'll beat us because everyone beats us, but you've got Villa away as well. Like, yeah, it's not. I can get why there's a lot of tension and a lot of anger in the Chelsea fan base, but I just think because Brighton are going to be on a bit of a high from beating you in the cup, and there's all of that kind of mental thing there. Well, hang on, they've just beaten us. Why can't we go and do it again? I've got a feeling that they'll, especially under the lights, I think Brighton will win. And I think, you know, in terms of Chelsea, the questions are going to be asked. Like Will is right about Maresca. Huge questions will be asked. If you lose this game and teams around you win and you slip down to say, I know you're fourth at the moment, but if you slip down to 6th or 7th.
If we lose to Brighton, they will move to within 6 points of us.
Yeah, and that's unacceptable.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't matter how you look at it. Brighton's manager is younger than Terry. no offense, but like he's massively inexperienced. He's first time in the big leagues. He's managed in the second German division. But like, yeah, I think the way they play, don't get me wrong, you spanked them at Stamford Bridge. Palmer scored that wonderful free kick, but the team you play, you as you were playing as a unit then compared to now looks like two completely different teams.
I think their manager learned a lesson as well. I think he was naive that day. He set up with a high line. I think it was very similar to what Ange did when he come to the bridge, and Chelsea exposed it. And
at least he learned, because Ange still hasn't learned.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying, right? But I think Maresca's been caught out recently, and I don't think he's learning. So this is where I think this is where Chelsea fans are now starting to doubt him. I think this is where Will is right, is that he's been given chances to prove that he's ready at this level. And I've said it time and time again in recent weeks, he's not taking those chances. And I think Brighton in the FA Cup was a huge show of that, because it shows that he hasn't learned and adapted and been able to change from where he was first time round when we played Brighton this season. The fact that now he could go into this game and learn off of the back of the FA Cup, but I'm not expecting him to, because I haven't seen it yet this season, and we go into this game weaker. I think it's an incredibly tough fixture. You mentioned like the Arsenal game coming up, the Villa game. They're games where we got a draw and a good win, and we also got a good win against Brighton earlier on in the season. It'll be interesting to see where Chelsea will be off the back of this like run of fixtures for sure.
I just the ultimate litmus test for me, for you guys, is how do you navigate the Conference League when you're back in it? Because you're going to have to play your stronger teams in the Conference League now. You no longer
I think it's March. We've added Palmer and a couple of others to the squad. I don't think Lavia and Fofana got added though. So we have added players, and Fofana apparently is back in 3 weeks. Huh?
I think it was Palmer and Caicedo, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you might be right. So we've got a stronger team for the Conference League. But this Brighton game, I think Chelsea really struggled to really sort of create anything with strikers available without them, unless it completely throws Brighton and it was something completely unexpected. And it's sort of a wild card move from Maresca. I actually just sort of predict a pretty similar game, because I think it's such a small time frame for things to have changed.
What do you think your front three will be? Like,
I honestly don't know.
You played Sancho, Neto, and Nkunku, didn't you, in the FA Cup game? Do you think you'll go with the same?
Yeah. I honestly don't know if he goes with like a Palmer and Nkunku as a 2, but almost like false, and just hope for runners beyond, and they sort of are quite fluid, and sort of players like Enzo Fernandez to step up higher. I just don't really see what he's going to do, unless he just plays Nkunku as a 9. But for me, I think he's got so much evidence to suggest that's not the right thing to do. But he might just do it. But
what about Madueke, Neto? Who you starting?
Neto's played false 9 for Wolves. Palmer's played false 9 a couple of times under Poch. They might do it, but for me, that wouldn't fill me with the most confidence, to be honest with you.
No. I'm saying, what's your front three? Because Cole Palmer's going to be the 10.
Yeah, so Nkunku probably starts. I think if Nkunku doesn't start off the back of like Jackson getting injured when he's been the replacement all season for Jackson, pretty much, I think Nkunku will be pretty frustrated whether it's in his right position or not. But I don't think Nkunku has done enough to earn that start in recent weeks as well.
So now that Jackson,
I think Neto probably starts.
But I think, Dan, what do you think about maybe if he used like Sancho as that false 9? I remember when Sancho was at Manchester United, and I think in the preseason, and I guess like Terry could like let me know if I'm right, but in the preseason, I remember Ten Hag like using Sancho in like that false 9, and I remember people saying that he didn't look bad there, and they thought that maybe that would be his position.
He did Liverpool away, no?
He did okay.
I think when the problem is, Will, and I hear what you're saying, right? But I think when you've got a squad that's got £60 million and Nkunku, who is classed as an attacker, I think he'll be playing. I think it wouldn't make sense to me if he didn't play. It's just what role does he occupy on the pitch? But I think Sancho probably starts out on the left. I think Sancho actually needs to have a big game. I think he sort of owes the fan base one, because I think they're backing him at the moment. They're not sort of putting too much on him, but other clubs are starting to make a bit of noise about Sancho and whether or not he's doing the same as what he did at Manchester United. So I think Sancho needs to have a big game for sure.
It certainly does. Viewers, give us your thoughts on that game. How is it going to pan out? Let us know in the comments section below. Obviously, another big game this weekend, and there's talk of an injury concern for Man United with Amad Diallo, and if that rumor turns out to be true, we're in as much trouble as anyone else when it comes to an attack that's light, because we only have a couple of other players. But Man United go to White Hart Lane What's your head saying about this game, Henry? What's your head saying about El Midoff?
It's got to be like you said at the beginning of the show. This has got to be the lowest ranking mid-off in since you've been doing the top 6 show. But how do I feel about this game? I mean, look, we've had a terrible week. Let's just be brutally honest. We've had a terrible season. Getting dunked out of the FA Cup and the League Cup.
You've had a terrible football life. If we're being fucking honest.
Yeah, I've had a terrible 28 years in football.
Henry, it's not that bad. You heard about the Qatari bid.
Yeah. I'll get onto that later if Sarah wants to talk about
that. From the Sun newspaper, by the way. I'm just put that out there.
And the Independent.
Hey, they got the Ben White deal, right? I'll give them one.
That's true. That's true.
But in terms of Tottenham, my head tells me this is going to be a draw. And I think the reason it'll be a draw, I think Man United will come and I think they will just sit up so defensively and play us on the counter. And I look at how poor we have been in recent weeks. I don't know what our front three is going to be. No Solanke, of course. Son apparently is a doubt as well. Van de Ven has been ruled out of this game as well. Don't know what's going on with his hamstring. Romero's out. They were all like our medical department needs to be investigated, because how can you be without an entire season with your centre back pairing for me is
They've been sacked. Didn't you hear? Tottenham.
Yeah, I know he's been sacked, but like this Man United game for Ange, this has to be it now. And I've been saying this for weeks. If we can't beat Manchester United, no offense, Terry, but you are just as bad as us. You might be better in the cups, but in terms of your league form, you were awful against in front of goal against it was your last game. You lost 2-0. You missed like a handful of chances. Was it Crystal Palace? Yeah. I look at the way we play. Surely you're going to come and want to get revenge after the 3-0 battering we gave you at
yeah, mate, look, I know we're bad. I know we're bad. And if the injury that I'm hearing about for Ahmad, again, I've only seen like...
who reported the injury?
I'm not too sure who reported it. KJ messaged me, so I've heard that Ahmad's out. I'm only going by what KJ told me. So if KJ's been misled, then fair enough. It's on KJ. So blame KJ people, not me. But if that's true, then it's crazy. I know how bad we are. I'm really open about it. I know how bad we are. I'm not going to lie. Our away form against the bigger teams has probably been the brightest bit under Ruben Amorim, though. And that's where there's a little bit of hope for me in that regard. I know you beat us in the Carabao Cup recently, but I didn't necessarily think you were that much better than us. First half, we had a lot of the ball, should have punished you, and we didn't. Started the second half badly, got back into it, and then our goalkeeper conceded from a corner, which you can't legislate for. So, look, I think it's one of those matches, can go either way. Either team can win. I don't know if I don't know if any team can genuinely walk away from this. This is the one thing for me. We might win, but am I going to walk away from it going, oh, bloody hell, well impressed? I don't know. A Spurs? I don't know. This feels to me like the least... sorry, let me finish. The least amount of mistakes wins.
Literally.
And I don't know if I've ever said that about a game. The least amount of mistakes wins it.
If results go, so let's say Manchester United beat Tottenham on Sunday and Everton win as well, we will be 16th in the Premier League. And like you said, your away form, got a point at Anfield, beat Manchester City. That kind of
dunked on Arsenal in the FA Cup. We've got to get that in there. We've got to get
there is something there that when you can't, I don't want to call this a big game because it's not, but when you play the bigger teams,
it's massive. It's massive.
No, but it's not like we're not a big team at the moment. Oh, we are horrendous. It's not like you're going away to Arsenal at the moment in the league. You're coming away to a team that is diabolical. And the part of me that is concerned about this game is we lack any sort of game management.
Can I jump in here?
You just one more thing, Egal. When you look at the individual decisions by Ange Postecoglou in recent weeks, they are the worst in the Premier League. Aston Villa, the only player creating chances in the first half, takes off Mikey Moore for a player in diabolical form. Against Liverpool, has to put Son up front, puts him on the left, puts Tel up front. You know, and now when you put that on top of Van de Ven and Romero both apparently missing the game, means our centre-back pairing could be something like Danso and Archie Gray. Like, Man United must be looking at that going, we can win this game as well. But if we're sitting here 16th on Sunday and he's still not been sacked,
16th.
Like the king was at the stadium yesterday, and he was asking Son about what sort of situations the club in, and Son goes, "We're in a bad point right now," and Daniel Levy's laughing about it.
Hang
He's
on,
smiling and joking.
The king,
the king, yeah, as in
like
Charles.
The king. Okay, cool.
No,
I just wonder.
the king's there, but when
okay,
King
I was there.
Just coming and visiting the stadium.
Oh shit! All right.
That's all our royal family do is they go to like library openings and museum openings.
Like
and
the occasional ribbon.
They want. Yeah, he's probably at Spurs to look at the best concert venue in the UK at the moment.
Yeah, he comes.
I was just gonna say this,
Go on again.
Henry. Tottenham being at home, is it actually a disadvantage because of the atmosphere you guys are currently creating?
Yes.
The negative atmosphere amongst your fan base. Could this actually benefit Manchester United? Would you see to the point where some fans are so angry at the manager that they want you to lose?
Oh my God! You haven't
Egal,
won at home. You haven't won at home since the 1st of November.
Terry, you didn't know this? They don't win home games.
Yeah, and Egal, if you add on to that as well,
we're fucked now. We're fucked.
If you add on to that the planned protest scheduled to take place at 2:30 against the ownership, if you add on to the fact
someone's gonna bring a guitar.
Oh, don't! It'll be a protest, and then loads of fans will be walking to the protest after spending thousands of pounds at the club shop. But like the protest apparently is after the final whistle goes, no matter the result, they're going to sit there and with banners and all that. All this is kind of teeing up for Tottenham to win a game. I just think I think that everyone's going to be expecting us to lose. Man United are going to come out, like you said. We haven't won a home game. What was that? The 1st of November. We've won 3 Premier League games since that. That is dying.
But you know the funny thing is, I'm laughing because whoever wins this game is gonna go on to lose the next game. You guys are both inconsistent teams.
Yeah, no, I don't want us to beat Man United and then Ange gets another 3 or 4 weeks. I'd happily lose to Manchester United, knowing the fact that as soon as it's 6:30 on Sunday, he's gone.
Why is he not sacked then?
I like that.
I don't get it. Jose Mourinho got sacked finishing 6th and being in a League Cup final. Conte got sacked for getting top 4 and then finishing around 8th or 9th. He's statistically
he promised a trophy. Maybe they want to see
in the Premier League era.
Daniel Levy got blamed for sacking Jose before a final, so maybe he doesn't want to sack. What do you call it? Ange before he gets knocked out.
You are in the Europa, Henry. Like, let it be. Like, you could possibly do something.
Listen, Will. We're going to come up against Bilbao or Man United or Lazio in the knockout stages. We have no bottle. We will crumble and we will lose. And what's the narrative? If we're sitting 16th and the excuse is, but we're in the Europa League, then I give up with this football club.
I will literally never pick you guys to win a trophy ever again. Like, that was a massive.
You said we were going to win the League Cup.
That's what I thought, and I was like,
we haven't given you stick for that yet.
Will, I'm pretty sure you said Ange is better than Arteta.
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Come on, you didn't say
that.
I remember being on Waffle, American Waffle, and you said Ange might actually be better than Arteta.
No, I don't think that was me.
You want to see something funny about Spurs? King Charles, yes, I know he met Son at the ground, but when they had King Charles out on the football pitch at Tottenham Hotspur, this is what they were having him do. It was all about the NFL at the ground.
Oh, wow.
It was all about the NFL.
Wow.
It's all about the NFL. Oh,
yeah, I see the American flag in like the background. Like,
oh my God.
An absolute.
Oh my God. That's poor throwing form by your king, by the way. You don't throw a football like that. Come on. Why is his arm extended like that? Nah.
Mate, listen, he's wearing a full suit, the ball's spinning well, and in his pocket. He's about 80 years old and just had cancer. He's doing all right, mate. He's doing all right. Go on, Charles. Mate.
Terry, come on. That's no excuse. Wait, but in terms of this Tottenham versus Manchester United mid-off, I actually think Tottenham, this is your easiest game that you have. I'm looking at your upcoming schedule, and I mean, maybe you could say, okay, well, Ipswich is after that, right? But I think you guys should be looking to take advantage of playing Manchester United, because after that, right, it's Ipswich, then you got to go play Man City, Bournemouth, Fulham, Chelsea, and then your next easy game is Southampton. So I know that you guys are kind of safe from relegation, but with the form that you're on, who knows what it could look like if you don't beat Manchester United, and then if you can't really pick up points from those other games. I think that you guys probably get a draw.
How bad could it be though, Will? Because they're not going to get relegated. They're going to be like,
bro. I mean, you can't. I mean, you never know. You know, like football is a funny thing. I mean, like they would obviously
don't see them being worse than the 3 teams that are in the relegation zone right now.
It's true.
I just don't see it. I just think
Man
like
United going to this game.
I just like to talk about it though, because
yeah,
funny.
but you know, like if they finish from 17th to 10th, like what is the difference? I just don't see a difference because like in terms of money, it's probably a little bit, but other than that, I just don't see a difference.
Yeah, probably
I think
4 or 5
anywhere
million.
from 10th to 17th for a team that
Yeah.
finished 5th last season is a sackable offense.
You know what's going to happen though, right? Both your teams are going to find a little run late in the season, if you can, or like a couple games where people don't expect you to win. You're going to start winning them. Maybe finish in like 8th or 7th or 10th.
Yeah, I've been saying that for weeks. We
Come
might
the
win
end of
this
the
game. There's nothing about this team right now. Or like James Maddison, where is he? He's apparently injured. Man United actually go into
He's
this
injured.
game. Apparently so. United go into this game. I just think they'll be confident. They've only had
I don't
one
think
defeat in
so.
the last 5 games. They've just won their FA Cup game. They've had an extra 2 or 3 days to prepare. We had to play that League Cup semi-final. They will be, I think they'll be confident going into this. Whereas, and if they score early, let's say against the odds, Man United get a goal in the first 15 minutes, that ground is going to be a toxic cesspit. And Man United...
What I will say, though, is I don't want to play my own team now. We don't score in the first half. We don't score in the first 50, 60, 70 minutes normally. But, yeah, listen, it's going to be a mad game. Joshua here says, can we talk about the Lissandro and Scholes beef?
What is the beef?
The beef is Scholes said basically he ain't good enough even when fully fit. And Lissandro just turned around and basically said, like, if you tried playing football in Argentina, you'd have got eaten alive because you're a pussy. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what was said. And then somebody else threw something about his daughter's toes into the conversation and all sorts of things. But then he's also, Paul Scholes said like he hasn't liked what he's seen from Lenny Yoro yet. And I'll be honest with you, like Paul Scholes is
what does that have to do with the argument?
There's a video of Paul Scholes with his daughter's toes in his mouth.
Oh,
right?
well, yeah.
It was Neil Mopai. He responded to
that was it. Yeah.
Was selling the Mopai thing.
There's no way.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, like, it is what it is. For me, I love Paul Scholes as a
Basically,
player.
he was biting his daughter's nails for her.
I don't think it was a nails. I think it was a splinter or something in her toe, and it just looks that way. Like, anyway, well, I don't want to go into that because it makes me feel a bit sick. I love Paul Scholes as a player. He's a legend of the club. Sometimes I feel like his punditry is a little bit off. And the way we speak about Lenny Yoro on the overlap today, like he's an 18-year-old fledgling centre-back. And just the way Scholes, like, I've seen nothing from him that I really like yet. But that's just nonsense. He's been cooked in one game.
Keep him, didn't he, Terry? He said,
It's the way he sort of talks. Do you know what I think it is with some of these players? Is that Scholes was lucky enough to, by the time he came into the Man United team, and it's not, he didn't do this, they'd already won multiple Premier Leagues, European trophies in the Cup Winners' Cup, FA Cups, and were established. And he went into a brilliant environment with the best manager ever, and that maintained until he retired. I just sometimes think some of these ex-Man United players that were in the Fergie era, they have no comprehension for what it's like to play at a club or play at Man United when times are bad. When you listen to the older legends, the players from the 70s and the 80s who knew the hard times, they are very different to the players that played under Fergie. And I think sometimes we see that in the political world. You see people talk about hardship, you know, and they've got brought up with silver spoon in their mouth. Their opinion on, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. They don't understand that some people don't have bootstraps. And I think that's the issue with some of these. So I'm not saying he's wrong about everything, Scholes. Some of the players he criticizes, I agree with. But some of the things that he says, I just feel are sometimes a little bit over the top. And other times I just think, was it needed? Did you need to be that harsh? I don't know, personally.
Well, tell me,
I question
rate him. Then why can't he just say it how it is? Like, why does it matter that he played for the
Well,
club? Like,
I think it's
if
worse
he
than
thinks
that.
that Yoro's a scrub, then why can't he just say, "Yo, I don't think this guy is good"?
But that's not what he said, though. So he spoke about keeping him, and he's got the potential and everything else. What he doesn't do, Scholes, for me, is apply the context of the situation. And again, you as a Real Madrid fan, you've only known good times. You are a Silver Spoon fan, not because of who you picked. like because of
He's
you.
a
Sorry,
season, by the way. So
yeah,
I know him.
silver spoon. Yeah, you're like someone that's got
You're still top of the league, bro.
my dad's business had a hard year. My dad's business had a hard year this year. We only got 1 week in Barbados. That's you guys, right? So the point I'm making is I'm not disagreeing with everything Paul Scholes says. The problem with it, when you listen to the analysis fully, is it very rarely does he apply context to the situation. There's a reason that so many of our signings have been bust at United, leave and then do well. He's the kind of person that wasn't that complimentary about McTominay. McTominay goes to Napoli and he's killing it. And that will just be, well, he's doing well over there, so fair play. Why are we not analysing the difference in environment, the difference in pressure? And that's often my issue. It's just not empty words, but Man United pundits don't apply context to any situation, and it frustrates me massively because our situation isn't normal half the time. But yeah, listen,
it's not only Man United pundits. I see this from a lot of pundits, but specifically your Man United pundits, from the Gary Nevilles, the Scholes. I feel like nowadays they're giving just hot takes. They're not giving you they're not educating you on football. They're not telling you why their point is valid. They're just giving you the hot take and leaving it to linger and moving on.
But also, I remember Rio Ferdinand a few years back saying it's a red flag about a player if the first thing that gets praised about them is hard work. And I understood it and agreed with it at the time, but my mind has changed. And I think, well, that's because you went into a club where hard work was a prerequisite that was never discussed because it happened organically because of the culture. But when you go into a club where the culture is broken, where hard work isn't a sort of underlying prerequisite that's applied 100% of the time, every single day, no matter what goes on, I'm talking about wanting players that work hard, not because I don't want good ability, but I don't see my players. And our manager has said it. Ruben has said there's been games. He uses the word suffer. He goes, sometimes we haven't suffered. And I think fans misinterpret what he means. It doesn't always mean we've got to lose and lose badly. He means that players are coming off the pitch sometimes and they're not even sweating. They're not even knackered. They're coming into training the next day and they look fine, where he wants them coming in broken down and beat up because they've run themselves into the ground. So I just think that Rio, and I'd love to talk to him about this. It's not like a dig at him. I think he almost doesn't understand the necessity of working hard because it was almost instinctual to him in that Man United squad where we need players to be pushed to work hard. So I just feel like the context is important. This here from Jerome says, so you would rather want your team to lose and be 16th rather than win against Man United just to get the manager out. This is what is wrong with this fan base. Dancing the loss to City because Arsenal did not win the league. He thinks you did. Yeah, you are a disgrace. He's basically saying you're a disgrace, Henry, and you should get out the club.
Okay, but okay. What I'd argue to that is,
but
yeah, sort of stuttering and muttering and liven yourself up. If we beat Manchester United, all it's going to do is kick the can further down the road. The inevitable is going to happen. He is going to get sacked. If we beat Man United,
what does it change this season? Because are you not too far gone to achieve anything? Maybe Europa League, right? But...
No, but Dan, I haven't just been saying what you just said there is pretty much bang on. It's not going to change anything. But if we did this like a proper club would have back in October, November, we might be around mid-table pushing for a Europa League spot right now, maybe in a final and maybe in the next round of the FA Cup. But because this club is one of the worst run from a not from a financial standpoint, from a football standpoint, we are now suffering the consequences of that. Sacking him now and bringing in Ryan Mason, yeah, we might get a new manager bounce or we might finish mid-table, but we're not going to win the Europa League.
So is the pressure now not just off Ange? Have they not just
it's on the owners as well as Ange? I think.
Yeah, but now because it's so far gone, the league, you're so far away. Obviously, like results could keep going the wrong way, but is the pressure now not off Ange because of the injury crisis, because of where you are in the league? Obviously, the pressure's on in terms of Europa League and achieving something there, but you're not going to get Europe. You're probably not going to get into the top half of the table. Maybe you scrape in, like Egal said, if you pick up a few results. But is it not just a free sort of pass till the end of the season now for him?
A free hit.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it. Because and I'm not trying to wind you up here. I just don't think Levy's going to act because I've not seen enough evidence yet to suggest that, like, there have been bad enough results for ages now that I think he would have already acted if he was going to get someone else in.
Yeah. He would have, but that again just shows how poorly run.
Because I kind of felt like this a little bit
What
with
division?
Poch last season, right? But although we were doing better, obviously in the cups. But I felt like they're not going to sack him because they would have already done it because there's already been so many bad results that he could have gone. And then lo and behold, from like this point till the end of the season, he actually turned a corner. Like, do you think there's a chance Ange does that?
Do you think a manager would come in at this point of the season? Like, do you think if we lose to Man United and sack Ange on Sunday, what manager would come in at this point right now?
Ryan Mason to the end of the season.
End the conversation there.
We will end it there because that's the thing. That doesn't improve them at all. I want to get through these super chats because I want to get onto the title race stuff here. Sorry, gents. Scholes is right. Man United fans are too emotionally attached to players that had them 13th with no leadership. Souness was right about Casemiro and Lissandro. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. At the end of the day, Casemiro wasn't a steady Eddie when he came into the football club. The problem with Man United is that it's very easy to do that analysis, English talent FC, and I know that's a dig at English talent. You like to do that. Scholes is right about some of the players that he criticizes, but what he doesn't do is apply the context of the situation. The same as what you've just done there with Lissandro and Casemiro, both brought in under a different manager who at the time we thought was going to implement a particular style of play, who abandoned that 3 or 4 months into signing them when they were both doing brilliantly. We have now gone in a completely new direction as a football club. Again, removing that context is an issue. Removing that context, for me, nullifies the conclusion. It nullifies a conclusion. It's like doing an experiment, doing the hypothesis, giving a conclusion, and then ignoring what happened in the middle. That's the problem with what you're doing there. We have too many bust signings who do well when they leave for me to believe that it's just bad recruitment in terms of the individual player. So that is what I'm talking about, my friend. Hindsight, but if Spurs had beaten City last season, they would have been in the Champions League now. Absolute facts. Chelsea are 4th place is what Ronin says here. Absolutely they are, but it's the form. They were in a title race 8 weeks ago, and if the form continues, you might be 8th or 9th in another 6 or 7 weeks.
2 wins in the last 9.
And your fixtures. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you, Luke, for encouraging the like button. Tevin here says, how I see it, a young manager needs an experienced squad, and a young squad needs an experienced manager. When both are young, success is rare. If you got, i.e., look at Arsenal, that's from an Arsenal fan in Tevin. That's a great super chat, Tevin. Decay here.
Did a very good job then.
Yeah. Negative Nelly Dan, you are 6'6". Lace up your cleats and warm up those hamstrings. Chelsea need a box striker. No way Neto crosses misses your dome.
No, I'll back myself. As long as someone's got a defib on the side of the pitch, I'll work my socks off to get a goal for Chelsea.
100% passionate.
Egal, Arsenal. The door has been left ajar.
Let's talk
by the Tarkovsky goal last night. A Arsenal lifeline has been gifted, but we know that the Martinelli, we know that the Havertz injuries are a disaster for you. But do you see yourself winning your next 2 games? Away against Leicester, at home against West Ham? Can you get the job done and keep the pressure on Liverpool?
I still believe in my defense. I still believe in my midfield. My attack might be very, very poor at this point. And I think any team in the league, you look at Liverpool, you look at Man City, they lose 4 of their 6 attacking options. They're gonna be down to their bare bones also, and it's not gonna be any better than what we currently have either. So I think you look at our midfield and attack, we should have enough to get through it. And set pieces being such a big threat in our attack, and Arsenal also not having any goal scorer in the top 10 this season, it is quite impressive that we're even in the position that we're in right now in the first place. So I do believe we'll have enough. Leicester away is going to be tougher now that we don't have our main guys. But if we can get Saka and Martinelli back, maybe we could do something. But right now, it's all in Liverpool's hands. We don't have control over what they do. We only can control what we do. And Terry, I do think we have enough for versus Leicester. Now, I'm going to have to reevaluate how we perform versus Leicester to give you a real take versus West Ham, because West Ham beat us last year, if I'm not mistaken, at our ground. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more cautious going into that game with their new manager and everything else. But Leicester, I expect us to beat them. Relegation team, we should be able to get the best out of them. They're not going to have a serious threat in attack.
What do you think the options are going to be for you now up front? We know the players are available, but are there any academy players? Are there any kind of
Did you not hear?
No.
Did you not hear? Mikel Moreno is the backup striker now. It indicates
that's not real. That's not real.
No,
Is it?
it's genuinely real. It came out that Mikel Moreno is seen as a Manuel Fellaini type, or a midfielder that can come in and be a battering ram and help out as a backup striker in the case that Trossard, in the case that Trossard gets injured.
He's the least physical player. Every time I see him go
because he's good. Because he's good aerially. Because he's good in the air. Rumor has it that it's a rumor, but that's what the rumor is, that he could be the backup. And also there is an academy striker who's, I think, 17 years old that they're looking at that could also be an option, which they did not loan out because of the injuries, and they wanted to have him as an option off the bench in the case of an emergency.
I know that Arteta wishes that he had that kid that went to Manchester United right about now. What is his name? Like Cheeto?
No. I think it's the other way around.
Martin, it'd been nice to have him at the moment.
I think it's the other way around. I think Cheeto Obi Martin is probably the biggest loser out of this whole Arsenal injury situation, because he would be starting in Premier League games.
Did he force a move, Egal? Did he want to leave?
He basically forced a move. Arsenal offered him 2 times what they originally were going to offer him, but Manchester United offered him.
Did he leave before Nketiah left?
Yes. He left before Nketiah left. He basically was out of contract, and he never signed never signed his new contract. He signed the highest contract he could sign with Manchester United, and Manchester United basically said they're going to give him an opportunity to first team football. And really and truly, Manchester United's pathway with Kobe Mainu, Garnacho, playing a bunch more academy kids than we did last year, it looked like Manchester United was going to give him a lot of opportunities because they played the most academy kids last year.
Like, I understand why he left. Like,
but this season, looking at the context of the situation we're in, you look at Cheeto Obi Martin. You look at the kid who went to the kid that went to Brighton. What do you call it? You look at the guy who went to he's playing currently at Ipswich, Omari Hutchinson. All these guys would be getting opportunities right now if they're still at Arsenal. But for one reason or another,
there's no way to predict that. Like, I have to wait for every single attacker to get injured for me to get an opportunity. So, like, I don't think that him leaving was a bad thing, right?
No, but look at Kelly. Look at Ethan.
Well, yeah, but aside from those two, who else has Arteta in the 5 years really brought through from the academy?
He gave
that's got consistent run. Like, who really?
Don't forget that Arteta was he might not have given consistent run to a lot of academy kids. I'll give you that, but here and there he did give them opportunities, and we have been in a title race for the last 2 seasons. And you're not going to be chopping and changing, putting in 18.
For sure. But so like, that's a great point. And I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I think like him going to Manchester United, where they do have a more of an emphasis on getting academy products into their first team, I don't think it was a bad move. Now, obviously, if he could see the future and know that come January, Kai Havertz would be out, and that there would be no other strikers that they could rely on, then maybe he would have stayed. But I don't think it was a bad move. But just in general, though, I'm kind of struggling to figure out how are Arsenal going to keep themselves competitive in these games coming up now, especially offensively, because
it's very simple.
Go ahead.
It's very simple. Our defense creates
not for sure.
Our defense is going to win the ball high up the pitch and create counterattack situations, or not only counterattack situations where we're high up the pitch and we're going up against maybe 2 defenders that are not recovering quick enough. It's really going to be more if we face low blocks where we have to break them down, we might struggle. But really and truly, our midfield and our defense, I back us to keep the games close. It's just how many goals can we nick? And
And again, I don't disagree with that, right? Obviously, like, your defense is what's going to keep you in these games. But I think like a player that we have to like look at a little bit more is, for example, like Amar Odegaard, right? Like, now with no Saka being there, no like Kai Havertz, I think is Martinelli injured as well, right? Yeah. So now you need Kai Havertz. Sorry, not Kai Havertz. Martin Odegaard. You need him to be very aggressive. Like, he can't be passive. He can't always look to like lay the ball off. No, like, he needs to be the one that takes the ball. He needs to be the one that's shooting. That's like, he's the X factor now for Arsenal's attack. And he needs to be a lot
I
better.
don't know if you know, but ever
Okay,
since Martin Odegaard was given time off for it to have his baby, he has been struggling, mate. He has been struggling. Like his form has been off, and it's not only his pace, it's not only his passing, his shooting has been horrendous. He has 1 goal this season, and it was the tap in that he scored versus Man City. He has not scored a single goal besides that in
But
the
then,
league.
like, who else can you look at now during this spell and say?
But the reality is, we have to trust Ethan. We have to trust Trossard. We have to trust Raheem Sterling. We have to trust Gabriel to chip in. We have to trust Declan Rice to try to get involved. Mikel Moreno maybe get involved. Really and truly, it has to be a collective because it cannot be one individual.
Can I throw this in from the other direction? We have seen one of the greatest English teams of all time collapse after a few injuries this season and not be competitive. And I mean, you saw what Madrid did to them the other day, and you yourself said that you didn't even play well and you still managed to beat them.
Yeah.
If Arteta navigates the next 5 or 6 weeks until he gets Martinelli, until he gets Saka back, and they're still within touching distance of top of the league, maybe even and I'm going by the next 2 games for Arsenal were very winnable against West Ham, very winnable against Leicester, because those teams are not particularly great this season. And in that same period, you've got Wolves going to Liverpool, and then they go away to Villa, which is hard, and then they play Man City away, which, look, they should be beating City, but you never quite know.
Yeah.
If Arteta navigates this period and maintains the competitiveness, keeps them in, within touching distance of this title race, what does that say about him as a manager to circumnavigate this situation? And I know people will partly blame him for creating the situation, not buying an attacker in the summer. I totally agree with that. But when we're judging it from this point onwards, a lot of people are expecting Arsenal to completely fall off now. And being, if that doesn't happen and he manages to keep them up there, what does that say about him as a manager? Does it tell us anything?
It tells us everything, Terry.
What does it tell you?
The board have let him down. This man is the reason why Arsenal are in the position that they're in, and he has been already navigating Martin Odegaard's injury, already navigating a centre-back midfield defensive situation where at the beginning of the season our midfielders were all injured. Midway through the season, our defenders were constantly getting chopped and changed, and now back into the season, all of our attackers have been out. If Liverpool, Chelsea, anybody was in this situation that we're in currently, you'd see a massive drop-off. But for us to be 6 points off the top of the league, where we've had only 2 players, Terry, who've been fit the whole season, that's Raya and Trossard, is actually impressive. And I don't think Arteta gets enough credit to still keep Arsenal in this situation. He gets criticized for constantly making mistakes, but the fact that we've been in this situation where we've still been this close in touching distance to Liverpool, I think we don't even need that striker to be better than Liverpool this season. We just needed a fully fit squad. We'd be in a better situation than Liverpool, 100%. And I think if it wasn't for refereeing decisions and a couple injuries, we would be the ones looking at winning the league right now, and not them.
I actually agree with Egal there in terms of you do have to give Arteta a lot of credit. And I think, like, you brought up Man City. I think the difference is, whereas Pep is stuck in his ways, right? Like, Pep's not going to adjust. It doesn't matter who's out there. He's going to play the same style of football. I think Arteta, because he's, not been as successful so far and because he's still trying to figure out, like, what's best, I think, like, he does adjust better with all these injuries that he's had. So I think that you do have to give him some credit for that as well.
I don't think anyone gives him credit for that. I think majority of people think Arsenal are just doing what they're supposed to be doing, ignoring the fact that Martinelli has missed Martin Odegaard's missed time, all these players missing time. And I looked at it the other day, Terry. Compared to Arsenal having 2 players fit from their starting 11 the whole season, Liverpool have had 7. That is...
I think there's that side of it. The problem is that everybody tries to point score in these circumstances. And what ends up happening is I saw some Arsenal guy, I don't follow him, it got retweeted. I'll find it later and send it to you, Egal, who tweeted something out. I told you at the start of the season that we'd end up in this situation because we didn't have enough players. Like, we'd end up in a situation where we couldn't challenge anymore because we had too many injuries and we didn't have a big enough squad. And then people were showing him, like, sending him back his tweet. What he said is that we're just not going to be in the title race all season. So it's like people claiming victory. I told you, no, you didn't say you would fall off from a title race come February because of the injuries. You said your squad wasn't good enough this season and Arteta wasn't good enough to even get back into one. You can't claim a moral. And so what you'll now see is no credit being given by him to Arteta because he wants to say, I was right about Arteta not being good enough. And I think there's a mixture in this. I think there's always a lack of balance when it comes to in the Arsenal fan base. I think that Arteta should have maybe pushed harder in the summer. I think he got a lot of control, as I'm being told, should have got another attacker in that summer. And if it was an either or either between Moreno or Calafiori and an attacker, now knowing what we know, they should have gone and got an attacker. Having said that, I think he was hung out to dry in January because the ball can see the injuries. There's no way he said it's okay. I'm okay. I don't believe.
He said he was disappointed.
Yeah, he did, but I don't believe on any level that he has walked out of a meeting with the board and gone, I'm completely happy with buying no one in January. And I think, just like Chelsea and just like Man United, they hung him out to dry. What I would say, when you look at the injury problems that Arsenal have had, and the fact that most of Arteta's detractors, whether they're Arsenal fans or not, have stated that 2 years running, since that shock title race no one expected, 2 years running, they predicted we won't be in it again this year. For you guys to be in it again, I just watch them try and claim these moral victories. I told you so. And I just think, but you've got that little bit right. But the rest of what you said is so wrong. I don't understand. This is what I don't understand about Arsenal fans. Most of their debates are arguing over which fan was right or wrong. And I just listen to most of the debates and go, but you've all got loads wrong and got loads right. What you should be talking about is what's best for your fucking football club, not trying to get your dicks out and seeing who's got the biggest willy. It's a bit weird. Because even if you've got the biggest one, wanting to stand there with other men getting your willy out, working out who's got the biggest one is strange. It's still a strange thing to do, no matter how big your boy is. It's just focus on your club. So, look, I think it's a terrible situation that's been created that multiple people are responsible for. And Arsenal fans are the only ones who I think that I have a bit of sympathy for because you don't really control it, as an example. But yeah, I'm interested to see the next few weeks now because I don't know if Arsenal are going to drop off as quickly as people think, especially not the next two games. I think you win your next two matches. After that, the games get a lot harder. There'll be bigger tests and having no, I mean, you don't have a prolific striker anyway, but having no Havertz, no Saka, no Martinelli, if you manage to get through that, I think it demonstrates a real good quality. Again, I think it demonstrates great team unity, a great culture in the dressing room, and your ability to adapt. And I'm intrigued to see how it goes. I really, really am. It's
one positive that can come from all this heartbreak and poor form and injuries is Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan playing a lot of minutes this season and actually breaking through and showing that they're ready for this level. These guys could only get better, hopefully. And that is two players that could save us millions in the transfer budget, in our transfer budget, looking for a backup for Saka or another backup defender for next season.
Yeah, I get that.
Arsenal's defense is too good for them to fall off necessarily. Yeah, I agree with that. As long as you're able to keep like Saliba and Gabriel fit, I think Arsenal will be able to withstand. Now, maybe you might drop points in terms of like draws because your attack is not good enough. I think that your defense will always keep you in the games. Like you'll never be out of the game.
And one more thing, Arteta's not going nowhere. To the Arsenal fans who want Arteta sacked, remember this. He's going to get a new contract. He's not going nowhere.
Did he just get a new contract? And he can get another one.
He's going to get a new contract. It's already been agreed at some point this season, if I'm not mistaken.
Damn.
And all of this stuff about Arsenal, yes, we didn't win the league last year. Yes, we didn't win the league year before that. We might not win it this year. But why just throw everything away?
No, wait, but then it gets to a point where how much longer though? Because it's like you're 5 years in.
I'm looking at my team. I'm looking at the age of my team. I'm looking at the situation with my team, and I'm saying he sorted out the defense. He sorted out the midfield. Give him the window, get him his attackers, and the sky's the limit. We are currently we are currently the only team I think in Premier League history who have challenged for the league up until February with no goal scorer in the top 10.
Not like that. Yeah, you also haven't won anything. And that's
guys, I'm running out of time. I'm trying to feed you up. I've literally got 5 minutes and I've got to go out. I'm going out tonight, so I've got to go. Sorry. As I was trying to interject a minute ago, and I want to get through these super chats. I'm sorry. And I will say this: the Arteta in and Arteta out debate. We've done this 100 times. I think we all know. I know exactly what you're all going to say. Like I literally know every argument you all have, and you both hold merit. Arteta in and Arteta out is a big thing, but I want to do these super chats because quite a few of them before I leave. Arteta's goal scoring isn't Arsenal's goal scoring isn't reliant on one or two players. The goals are shared. Second highest goal tally in the league. That's true, Wayne. But Kai Havertz, Martinelli, and Saka probably take up a massive percentage of those goals. So that's important. Ethan will let off shots. That's a gunman. He could do it. He's a very talented player. Arsenal fans need to pipe down. Not won a trophy in 5 years and spent over 800 million. That's why the media calls them out. And listen, Spider-Man, they're right to be challenged. I think for the last 2 seasons especially, once the rebuild was complete, once they've been in the title race, the standards are win those trophies and they'll be criticized without doing it 110%. Terry, you don't keep the same energy for other clubs? And I absolutely do. What have I called Pep out for since October? I expect him to be able to get his team back to being competitive and hard to beat, even with Rodri being out. I don't think it's acceptable for his team to be so easy to run through just because you've lost the midfielder. Man United's team weren't easy to run through when we lost Roy Keane. Our team wasn't easy to run through when we lost Cantona when he kicked racism out of football. We didn't win the leagues those years, but we came a narrow second, I think, in both of them. So I do hold Arsenal to that same standard. I'm literally saying, but this is the problem. You hate Arsenal so much. You think I'm being overly positive. I'm saying I don't expect them to fall off. And if they do lose the next 4 or 5 matches, I'm going to still criticize them. I'm not going to say the injuries mean they can just lose games. No, I think that's wrong, in my opinion. So that's exactly the same energy, Ali. You're just not hearing it because I'm not saying nasty words about Arsenal. I don't say nasty words about City either. That's the problem, because I'm not saying Arsenal was shit, bruv. You're going, there's no criticism. Get out of that mindset. Stop listening to gutter content. Arteta has a big ego because he prefers mediocre players than trying to make them into world-class players. Thoughts?
I've heard this so much, but he bought Declan Rice for 100 million. I'm not sure I buy it. With a couple of players, I understand that he might have bought them, but I think what he's doing is trying to build a good environment rather than be considered like a weak mentality. I think he wants players that are all good for each other, because he's seen what happens when you add a bad apple to the group with someone like Aubameyang. It really disrupted a lot of things for Arsenal, even though the argument is that with those players in the dressing room, they won their only trophy that he's won. But I still think he's built something really good at Arsenal. I actually just think now that maybe the board are limiting him a little bit when it comes to certain situations.
That's a great answer. I actually think Declan Rice will be our key player. He needs to have a generational run of form. He may have. And if you get through it and you're still up there, you're still in the race, I think it says a lot. I do agree with Egal to a certain extent. If they're going to keep Arteta, which this is the one argument I have against the Arteta routers. I get you don't rate Arteta and I respect your opinion. But if he's staying, some of them are like, I don't want him getting more money. That for me is counterproductive, because that ensures you're definitely not going to get better. I feel like a lot of them don't want him getting more money in case they do go out and get Zubimendi, Osimhen, and somebody else, and then they win the league, and they'll have to sit there and go, I got it wrong. And they don't want to say, I've got it wrong. I don't understand why you wouldn't want your club getting more money. I hope
he needs more money. When you look at the amount of money that all these teams around him are spending, like they're pretty much one of the lower teams.
Well, in the period of the 800 million euros or so that's been spent, I think they're second bottom out of the top 6 still.
Chelsea has spent £1 billion more than him.
Chelsea has spent more, United has spent more, City has spent more. I think it's only Liverpool that have spent less than them, but that's probably going to change now with certain players leaving.
If they spend 200 million wisely, they've got a team that's probably good enough to compete and be rotated in a lot of competitions.
No, I agree with that. Look, I want to thank everyone who's tuned in. I'm off out, so I apologize because I've got to go. Will, Henry, Dan, absolute legends, and Egal for coming on. I want to thank all of our super chatters. We're back with you tomorrow for more content. Get yourselves across though to Hassam's channel. He's titled it Liverpool Against the World. Oh, bless you, Hassam. Oh, bless you, little cotton socks. Go over there and support my bro. Until next time, people, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And I'll see you all again soon. Peace.